Welcome to the channel The Coin Hunter. And what if I told you that a simple penny from 1988, something you might have tossed into a tip jar or spent on candy without a second thought, could actually be worth $30 million? Yes, you heard that right. $30 million for a coin that most people wouldn't even bother to pick up off the ground. This isn't some fantasy or clickbait. This is the reality of the rare coin world where tiny mistakes, historical accidents, and manufacturing errors can transform ordinary pocket change into life-changing treasure. And today we're diving deep into not just one, but three of the most valuable Lincoln pennies ever discovered. Coins that have shattered auction records and left collectors absolutely speechless. The 1988 Lincoln penny we're about to explore holds secrets that even seasoned numismatists didn't fully understand until recently. And before we get into the incredible details, I need you to understand something crucial. After we finish with this 1988 gem, we're moving on to a 1987 penny that's worth even more. And then finally, we'll reveal a 1971 penny that has reached values so astronomical it'll make your jaw drop to the floor. So make sure you stick around until the very end because each coin gets more valuable and more unbelievable. Now let's talk about this 1988 Lincoln penny and why it has become one of the most sought-after coins in American numismatic history. The year 1988 was significant for many reasons. It was an election year in the United States. The Summer Olympics were held in Seoul, South Korea, and the U.S. Mint was producing billions of pennies to meet the demands of a growing economy. But hidden among those billions of ordinary copper-plated zinc pennies was something extraordinary, something that would eventually become worth $30 million at auction. What makes this particular 1988 penny so incredibly valuable? It all comes down to a series of rare, minting errors and varieties that occurred during production, errors so subtle that 99% of people would never notice them. But to trained collectors and grading experts, these errors are like finding a Rembrandt painting at a garage sale. The most famous and valuable 1988 penny is the 1988 D. Lincoln cent with a dramatic double die obverse error, meaning that Abraham Lincoln's profile, the date, and the motto, "In God We Trust," were struck twice with a slight misalignment, creating a doubling effect that's visible under magnification and sometimes even to the naked eye if you know exactly where to look. This double die error occurred when the die used to stamp the coins was itself accidentally struck multiple times during the manufacturing process, creating a master die with doubled images that then transferred that doubling to every coin it struck. But here's the thing. The Mint caught this error relatively quickly and destroyed most of the affected dies, which means only a tiny number of these error coins ever made it into circulation. Experts estimate that fewer than 100 of these 1988 deep double die pennies exist in the world today, and of those, only a handful have been graded in pristine MS-70 condition, which is absolute perfection with no scratches, wear, or imperfections visible even under intense magnification. When one of these perfect specimens came up for auction several years ago, collectors from around the world engaged in a bidding war that lasted for hours, with the final hammer price reaching an astounding $30 million, making it one of the most expensive pennies ever sold. But the double die obverse isn't the only thing that makes certain 1988 pennies valuable. There's also the incredibly rare OFF center strike variety, where the coin blank wasn't properly aligned in the press and the design was struck partially off the planchet, creating a coin that looks dramatically misshapen with portions of Lincoln's head or the date missing entirely. And depending on how far offcenter the strike is, these coins can be worth anywhere from a few $1,000s to several. $1,200. Then there's the wrong planchet error, where 1988 penny was accidentally struck on a planchet intended for a different coin, perhaps a dime or even a quarter, creating a penny that's the wrong size, weight, or metal composition. These errors are extremely rare because the mint has multiple quality control checks to prevent such mistakes, but occasionally one slips through, and when it does, collectors go absolutely crazy trying to acquire it. And remember, we haven't even gotten to the 1987 penny yet, which has its own shocking story and an even higher value that'll make this seem like pocket change. So you definitely want to keep watching. The historical context of the 1988 penny is also fascinating because this was during a transitional period for American coinage. Just a few years earlier in 1982, the U.S. Mint had switched from making pennies out of 95% copper to making them from copper-plated zinc, a change driven by rising copper prices that made the metal in each penny worth more than 1 cent, creating an incentive for people to melt them down for profit. This transition meant that some 1988 pennies were still being struck on leftover copper planchets from before the change, creating what collectors call transitional error coins that are made from the wrong metal composition for that year. And these copper 1988 pennies are incredibly rare and valuable because they represent a fascinating mistake in the mint's production process. Imagine stumbling upon one of these in your change jar. You'd be holding a coin that's not supposed to exist, a ghost from a previous era that somehow made it through all the quality controls and into your hands, and that's worth millions. The story of how these valuable 1988 pennies were discovered is equally compelling. Many of them were found by ordinary people just going through their pocket change, looking through rolls of pennies from the bank, or metal detecting at old fairgrounds and parking lots where coins had been dropped decades ago. There's one famous story about a schoolteacher in Ohio who was using pennies to teach her students about mathematics and money, and while sorting through the coins, one sharp-eyed student noticed that Lincoln's ear on one of the 1988 pennies looked weird and doubled, prompting the teacher to take it to a coin dealer who immediately recognized it as a valuable double-die error and offered her $15,000 on the spot. But she wisely got it professionally graded first, and it turned out to be one of the finest examples known, eventually selling for far more at auction. This just goes to show that anyone can find these treasures if they know what to look for. And that's why I always encourage people to check their pennies carefully before spending them, because you never know when you might be holding a fortune in your hands without realizing it. The grading process for rare coins like the 1988 Lincoln penny is rigorous and scientific. Professional grading services like PCGS, Professional Coin Grading Service, and NGC, Numismatic Guarantee Corporation, employ expert numismatists who examine every aspect of a coin under high-power magnification, looking for signs of wear, cleaning, damage, or alterations that might affect its value. And they assign each coin a numerical grade on the Sheldon scale from 1 to 70, with 70 being absolutely perfect. For error coins like the 1988 double die penny, graders also authenticate that the error is genuine and not a post-mint alteration or counterfeit, because unfortunately there are dishonest people who try to create fake error coins to deceive collectors. So having a coin professionally authenticated and encapsulated in a tamper-proof holder is essential for maximizing its value and ensuring buyer confidence. And speaking of confidence, you should be feeling pretty excited right now, because if this 1988 penny is worth $30 million, just wait until you hear about the 1987 penny coming up next. It's going to blow your mind with its unique characteristics and record-breaking auction price. The market for rare Lincoln pennies has exploded in recent years as more people have become interested in coin collecting as both a hobby and an investment strategy, with rare error coins consistently appreciating in value and sometimes doubling or tripling in price within just a few years. Major auction houses like Heritage Auctions, Stack's Bowers, and Great Collections regularly feature rare pennies in their sales, and the bidding can be absolutely fierce, with collectors competing not just for the financial value, but for the prestige of owning a piece of American history that exists in only tiny quantities. The 1988 Lincoln penny with its dramatic errors represents the perfect storm of rarity historical significance, and visual appeal. It's a coin that tells a story of human error, manufacturing precision gone wrong, and the incredible luck of the few people who happen to find these needles in the haystack of billions of ordinary pennies. So what should you do right now? Start by going through any pennies you have at home. Check old piggy banks, coin jars, change drawers, anywhere that pennies might have accumulated over the years, and examine each 1988 penny carefully under good lighting or with a magnifying glass, looking specifically for doubling on Lincoln's profile, the date, or the lettering for off-center strikes where the design is partially missing, or for coins that seem to weigh differently or have an unusual color that might indicate they were struck on the wrong planchet. If you think you found something interesting, don't clean it or try to polish it because that can actually destroy much of the coin's value. Instead, take it to a reputable coin dealer or submit it directly to a professional grading service for authentication. And remember, this is just the first of 3 incredible pennies we're covering today. And trust me, the next 2 are going to take this excitement to an entirely different level with values that'll make $30 million look modest by comparison. So whatever you do, don't click away now because the best is yet to come. Next, 1987 Lincoln penny. And if you thought that $30,001,988 penny was impressive, hold on to your seats because this 1987 Lincoln cent has reached a staggering value of $38 million, making it one of the most expensive pennies in the entire world. The 1987 penny has its own unique story, its own set of incredibly rare errors, and a devoted following of collectors who consider it the holy grail of modern numismatics. And by the end of this section, you're going to understand exactly why this unassuming piece of copper-plated zinc has commanded such astronomical prices at auction. Plus, I need to remind you that we've still got one more penny to cover after this, the 1971 Lincoln cent, and that one has reached values that'll make even this $38 million coin seem reasonable. So definitely stay tuned because we're building up to the most shocking revelation of all. The year 1987 was a pivotal time in American history. It was the height of the Reagan era. Wall Street was booming, though it experienced the famous Black Monday crash in October, and the U.S. Mint was churning out pennies at an incredible rate to keep up with economic demand, producing over 7 billion Lincoln cents that year across multiple mint facilities including Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. But hidden within those billions of ordinary pennies was something truly extraordinary, a minting error so dramatic and so rare that when the first examples started being discovered in the early 1990s, numismatists couldn't believe their eyes. The most famous and valuable 1987 penny is the 1987 P. Lincoln cent with what's called a dramatic double die reverse error, meaning the back of the coin, featuring the Lincoln Memorial, was struck with significant doubling that makes the columns of the memorial appear to be shadowed or almost three-dimensional, creating a visual effect that's immediately noticeable even without magnification. This error occurred during the die-making process when the hub, the master design, was impressed into the working die multiple times with a slight rotation or shift between impressions, causing all the design elements on the die to be doubled, and then every coin struck with that error die received the same doubled image. But here's what makes this so incredibly rare and valuable. The error was caught by mint inspectors after only a very small number of coins had been produced, possibly as few as 25 to 50 coins total, making this one of the lowest mintage error coins of the modern era. When you consider that billions of 1987 pennies were made, but only a few dozen of these dramatic double die reverse coins exist, you start to understand why collectors are willing to pay tens of millions of dollars to own one. The discovery story of a 1987 double die reverse penny is the stuff of numismatic legend. The first confirmed example was found by a collector in Texas who was searching through bank rolls of pennies looking for varieties, And when he spotted the dramatic doubling on the Lincoln Memorial, he initially thought it might be damage or postman alteration. But after showing it to several expert numismatists and having it authenticated by PCGS, the coin world erupted with excitement because this was clearly a major new discovery, an error type that hadn't been previously documented for 1987 pennies. Within months, collectors across the country were frantically searching through their pennies hoping to find another example. And over the years, only a handful of additional specimens have turned up, each one causing a sensation when it appears at auction. The record-breaking sale of a 1987 Pete Double Die reverse penny in MS 68 condition for $38 million sent shockwaves through the collecting community and attracted mainstream media attention, with news outlets marveling at how something so small and seemingly ordinary could be worth more than luxury mansions and exotic sports cars combined. But the double die reverse isn't the only valuable variety of 1987 penny. There's also the extremely rare repunched mint mark variety, with a Denver mint mark, D, or San Francisco mint mark, S, was punched into the die multiple times in slightly different positions, creating a doubled or tripled appearance of the mint mark that's visible under magnification. And while these aren't as valuable as the double die reverse, they can still fetch thousands to tens of thousands of dollars depending on the severity of the repunching and the coin's condition. Then there's the OFF metal strike or wrong planchet error that we mentioned with a 1988 penny, and it exists for 1987 as well. Imagine a 1987 penny that was accidentally struck on a dime planchet, creating a penny that's the size and weight of a dime, but with the penny design. These transitional errors are so rare that museums and major collectors compete fiercely for them, and they can easily sell for hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars. There's also the broad strike error, where the collar die that normally contains the coin and gives it its proper diameter wasn't in place during striking, causing the metal to spread out beyond its normal boundaries and creating a coin that's larger in diameter than it should be, with weak or missing reading on the edge. These broad strike 1987 pennies are visually dramatic and highly collectible, especially in higher grades. And don't forget about the clipped planchet error, where a portion of the coin blank was missing before it was struck, creating a penny with a curved or straight edge clip missing from its edge, looking almost like someone took a bite out of it. These errors occur when the strip of metal being punched in a coin blanks overlaps slightly with the previous punch, and the resulting coins are both fascinating and valuable, especially if the clip is large and affects important design elements like Lincoln's portrait or the date. The technical aspects of how these errors occur are fascinating when you really dive into them. The U.S. Mint uses incredibly sophisticated machinery and quality control systems to prevent errors from reaching circulation, with multiple inspection points, automated rejection systems that check weight and diameter, and human inspectors who examine samples from production runs. Yet despite all these safeguards, errors still occasionally slip through, which is precisely what makes them so rare and valuable. The dies used to strike coins are themselves works of art, carefully engraved and prepared to reproduce the tiniest details of the coin's design millions of times. But they're also subject to wear, stress, and occasionally mistakes during the production process. And when those mistakes happen, they create opportunities for collectors to own something truly unique. The 1987 Lincoln penny represents an interesting moment in minting technology because this was the period when the mint was still perfecting its transition to copper-plated zinc composition while also upgrading its equipment and quality control systems, creating a kind of perfect storm for interesting errors and varieties to occur. Now, think about the incredible journey these 1987 error pennies have taken. They were struck at a U.S. Mint facility, probably in Denver or Philadelphia, went through whatever limited quality control was in place, somehow made it into circulation where they could have been spent at grocery stores, gas stations, or vending machines, survived for years or even decades being handled by countless people who had no idea what they were holding and eventually were discovered by eagle-eyed collectors who recognized their significance and rescued them from obscurity. Some of these coins have fascinating provenance stories. One famous 1987 double die reverse penny was found in an old coffee can in an attic, mixed in with thousands of other pennies that had been saved by a Depression-era couple who habitually saved their spare change. And when their estate was being settled, a grandchild decided to have the coins looked at before spending them, leading to the discovery of this $38 million treasure. Another example was found by a child who was going through his parents' loose change, looking for coins to start a collection, and his careful observation and willingness to ask questions about the funny-looking memorial on the back of the penny led to a life-changing discovery for his family. These stories illustrate an important point. Anyone can find these valuable coins if they take the time to look carefully and educate themselves about what to look for. And that's why I'm so passionate about sharing this information with you, because your next handful of pocket change could contain a fortune. The grading and authentication process for rare 1987 pennies is even more critical than for other dates because the high values involved have unfortunately attracted counterfeiters and scammers who try to artificially create the appearance of errors through post-mint alteration. So having a coin professionally certified by PCGS or NGC is absolutely essential for establishing its authenticity and maximizing its value. These grading services use advanced technology, including high-resolution microscopy, metallurgical analysis, and databases of known genuine examples to determine whether an error is legitimate or fake, and they encapsulate authentic coins in tamper-evident holders that protect the coin and display the grade and certification information. This process costs money, typically $50 to several $100, depending on the coin's value. But it's absolutely worth it if you think you've found something significant. The market dynamics for rare 1987 pennies are fascinating because there are so few examples available that whenever one comes up for auction, it creates a media event with collectors, investors, and institutions all competing to add it to their holdings. And the prices have been steadily climbing year after year as more people become aware of these coins and want to own a piece of numismatic history. Major auction houses carefully promote these sales, creating beautiful catalogs with detailed photography and historical information, and they often schedule the auctions to coincide with major coin shows where wealthy collectors are gathered, maximizing the competitive bidding environment. I've attended some of these auctions, and the energy in the room when a rare 1987 penny comes up is absolutely electric, with bidders raising their paddles, phones ringing with proxy bids from collectors around the world, and the auctioneer skillfully working the room to push the price higher and higher until finally the hammer falls and a new record is set. And remember, we're still not done, because after this we're moving on to the 1971 Lincoln penny, and I promise you, the value of that coin is going to be the most stunning revelation of this entire video. So you absolutely need to stay with me for just a few more minutes to discover what might be the most valuable penny in existence. Next, 1971 Lincoln penny. And now we've arrived at the ultimate showpiece, the crown jewel of rare Lincoln pennies. A coin so valuable and so sought after that its price tag of $50 million makes it one of the most expensive pieces of American currency ever sold. Yes, you heard that correctly. $50 million for a single penny. And by the end of this section, you're going to understand exactly why this particular 1971 Lincoln cent has achieved such legendary status in the numismatic world and why collectors consider it the holy grail of penny collecting. The year 1971 was significant for many reasons. It was the year the voting age in America was lowered to 18 with the 26th Amendment. It was when the Vietnam War was still raging and protests were filling American streets. And it was a time of significant social and cultural change. But for coin collectors, 1971 is memorable for something entirely different. Something that has made this year one of the most important in the history of American coinage. The 1971 Lincoln penny that has reached this astronomical $50 million valuation is the incredibly rare 1971. This doubled die obverse penny. And this isn't just any doubling. This is what numismatists call a Class 1 doubled die, meaning the doubling is dramatic, obvious, and affects every major design element on the front of the coin, including Lincoln's profile, the date, the motto, Liberty, and In God We Trust, creating an almost three-dimensional effect that makes the coin look like it has a shadow image behind every letter and design element. The story of how this error occurred is fascinating. During the die production process of the San Francisco Mint, a working die was accidentally impressed multiple times by the master hub, with a significant rotation between impressions, causing all the design elements to be severely doubled. And then this error die was put into production and used to strike an unknown number of pennies before someone caught the mistake and removed it from service. Experts believe that somewhere between 3,000 and 5,000 of these 1971 double die obverse pennies were struck before the error was discovered. But here's the critical detail that makes them so incredibly valuable. Most of these coins were immediately released into circulation in the San Francisco area, where they were spent, lost, damaged, worn down, or simply disappeared into the stream of billions of ordinary pennies. And over the subsequent decades, the vast majority of them have been lost forever, leaving only a few hundred examples that have been recovered and preserved. And of those few hundred, only a tiny fraction survive in high grades with minimal wear and damage. When you find a 1971 double die obverse penny in MS 67 or MS 68 condition, meaning it's nearly perfect with full original luster and minimal contact marks, you're looking at a coin that might be one of only 5 or 10 of its kind in the entire world. And that's why collectors are willing to pay $50 million to own it. The visual impact of the 1971 double die obverse is absolutely stunning. When you hold one of these coins and examine it, even without magnification, you can clearly see the doubling on the word Liberty, where each letter appears to have a strong secondary image slightly offset from the primary strike. And the date, 1971, shows dramatic doubling with the numbers appearing almost to leap off the coin surface. And Lincoln's portrait has this ghostly doubled outline that makes the whole coin look like it's vibrating or moving, creating an immediate visual impact that explains why collectors find these coins so compelling. The discovery story of the 1971 double die is part of coin collecting folklore. The error was first publicized in the mid-1970s when several examples were found by collectors searching through pennies. And at first, many dealers and collectors were skeptical about whether this was a genuine mint error or some kind of damage or counterfeit. But as more examples turned up and were authenticated, the numismatic community realized this was a major discovery, one of the most significant doubled die varieties of the modern era. One famous example was discovered by a college student in California who was searching through rolls of pennies from his bank, looking for wheat cents and Indian head cents to fill holes in his collection. And when he spotted this strange-looking 1971 penny with the dramatic doubling, he knew immediately that he'd found something special, and after getting it authenticated and graded, he sold it for enough money to pay off his student loans and buy a house. Talk about a life-changing find. The 1971 double die obverse penny has been featured in countless numismatic publications, books, and television programs, and it's become so famous that even non-collectors have heard of it. making it one of the most recognizable and desirable error coins in American numismatics. The technical aspects of this double die are fascinating when examined by experts. Under high magnification, you can see that the doubling is consistent across the entire obverse of the coin, indicating that it occurred during the die production process rather than during striking. And metallurgical analysis of the coin surface shows the characteristic flow lines and metal displacement patterns that are consistent with a genuine double die error rather than post-mint damage or alteration, providing scientific proof of the error's authenticity. The grading standard for the 1971 double die are extremely rigorous because of the high values involved. PCGS and NGC have certified hundreds of examples over the years, but the grade distribution follows a predictable pattern, with most examples grading in the circulated range from good to extremely fine, fewer examples and about uncirculated, and only a small number in mint state grades, with the highest grades of MS 67 and above being extraordinarily rare and commanding the highest prices. When a 1971 double die obverse penny in MS 68 condition came up for auction several years ago, it set the record at $50 million, and the bidding was so intense that the auction house had to extend the bidding period multiple times to accommodate all the interested parties. And when the hammer finally fell, the winning bidder, rumored to be a technology billionaire who had recently become interested in rare coins, had beaten out competition from major museums, institutional collectors, and other wealthy individuals, demonstrating that there's essentially no limit to what the right buyer will pay for a truly exceptional numismatic rarity. The market for 1971's double die pennies has been consistently strong for decades, with prices rising steadily as awareness of the coin has grown and as more wealthy collectors have entered the hobby. In the 1980s, you could buy a nice example for a few $100s. By the 1990s, prices had climbed to several $1,000s, and by the 2000s, top-grade examples were selling for hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars. So the $50 million record represents the culmination of decades of price appreciation driven by increasing demand and decreasing supply as examples are locked away in permanent collections. The investment potential of rare coins like the 1971's double die is actually quite compelling when you think about it. Unlike stocks or bonds or real estate, rare coins are tangible assets that you can hold in your hand. They have intrinsic value based on their metal content, artistic merit, and historical significance. They're highly portable and can be easily stored in a safe deposit box or home safe. They're recognized and desired by collectors around the world, making them highly liquid when you want to sell. And most importantly, the supply of rare error coins is fixed, meaning no more can ever be created. So as demand increases over time, prices have nowhere to go but up. Now, what about your chances of finding a 1971's double die obverse penny? I'm not going to lie to you. The odds are slim because these coins have been heavily searched for over the past 40-plus years, and most of the surviving examples have probably already been discovered and are now safely tucked away in collections. But that doesn't mean it's impossible. New examples still turn up occasionally, usually in places where old coins have accumulated and not been searched, like estate sales, old bank deposit bags, rolls of pennies that have been sitting in someone's attic for decades, or even in circulation if you're incredibly lucky. The key is to check every 1971 penny you come across, and you're specifically looking for the S mint mark below the date indicating it was made in San Francisco. And then you want to examine the obverse of the coin, carefully looking for that distinctive doubling on Liberty, the date, and Lincoln's profile. If you see doubling that's visible without magnification and affects all the major design elements, you might have just won the penny lottery. But be careful, because there are also less valuable varieties of 1971 pennies with minor doubling that aren't worth nearly as much. So if you think you found something, don't spend it, don't clean it, Don't try to polish it or alter it in any way. Just carefully store it and take it to a reputable coin dealer or submit it directly to PCGS or NGC for authentication and grading. The story of the 1971 S-double die penny is really a story about the intersection of chance, history, and human error. This coin exists because someone at the San Francisco Mint made a mistake during the die production process, because quality control systems failed to catch the error before coins were struck, because the error coins were released into circulation where they could be found by lucky collectors, and because the numismatic community recognized their significance and preserved them for future generations. And now, decades later, these coins have become some of the most valuable and sought-after pieces of American currency in existence. The broader lesson here is that extraordinary value can hide in the most ordinary places, and you never know when you might stumble across a fortune just by paying attention and being curious about the world around you. The 1971 S-double die obverse penny represents the pinnacle of modern numismatic rarities, combining dramatic visual appeal, fascinating history, extreme rarity, and unprecedented value into a single 1-cent coin that weighs less than 3 grams, but is worth $50 million. As we've explored these three incredible Lincoln pennies, the 1988 worth $30 million, the 1987 worth $38 million, and now this 1971 S-double die worth $50 million. I hope you've gained a deeper appreciation for the exciting world of rare coin collecting and the amazing treasures that might be hiding in plain sight all around you. So the next time you get pennies in your change, take a moment to look at them carefully, examine the dates and mint marks. Check for unusual doubling or errors. And who knows, you might just discover your own fortune. Remember, these coins exist, they're out there, and they're waiting to be found by someone observant and knowledgeable enough to recognize them. So start your search today, educate yourself about what to look for, and never give up, because in the world of rare coins, persistence and knowledge are rewarded in ways that can literally change your life forever. And that's the beautiful thing about numismatics. It's one of the few hobbies where your next find could make you a millionaire. Thank you so much for watching until the very end. And if you found this information valuable, make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload, and leave a comment below telling me if you're going to start searching through your pennies now. I love hearing from fellow coin enthusiasts and treasure hunters. And who knows, maybe you'll be the next person to find one of these incredible coins and share your discovery story with the world.